Thank you all for coming to the fourth talk in the series. No, third talk in the series. I am very excited to come to this talk and introduce Dr. Xintian Du, who is a postdoctoral associate at the UB Institute of Learning Sciences, where she explores the cutting-edge research on how young children learn through play and technology. Dr. Tu has a PhD in learning sciences and a minor in inquiry methodology from Indiana University. Dr. Tu specializes in designing immersive and interactive learning environments, including mixed reality to foster and capture children's learning in dynamic ways. Dr. Tu's research interests fall into embodied learning, play, and advanced technology, aiming to create transformative educational experiences for all young learners. Please welcome Dr. Tu. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to my talk. And today I'm going to go through some of my research about designing the future of learning and the collective embodied play. Why there's the echo?
I'm too close to this.
Oh, yeah. So embodied play in mixed reality for young children. Yeah, of this. Where's the speaker? Okay, I don't know. So a part of myself is I have been engaged in study with young children for about 10 years. I study with starting young children in lab settings and then move to a more sociocultural perspectives. And another part of me, I'm a big technology nerd. So I'm not only doing technology for my research, but it's a part of myself. So I always explore all types of new technology, starting from different types of VR games, digital games, or like AI technology and platforms. So why that make it unique me is I want to study young children in different settings with most exciting technologies. Therefore, that leads to my whole research interest is like what is missing in the world of extended reality environment for young children. So think about the development technology at the very beginning. It might not be applicable to amount of learners. So I think there's some core value in my mind is how we can really get students engaged in informal settings with multiple learners, as well as offer them the opportunity to collectively interact with the technology. Theirs is not individually interact with technology, but more like how they can do it collectively and collaboratively. And another thing I'm thinking is learning by this means is not a dichotomy, which is a progress, which means for young learners, they might not be able to verbalize or make things abstract afterwards. That means some of these embodied learning or collective learning might be hard to capture or assessing afterwards if you're only using multiple choice or survey data. So I'm really thinking about how we can help this alignment to really think assessing young children's embodied learning afterwards. That leads to my two major research themes in my research. It's about like first how we design. So design technology enhance the learning environment for young children. And the second is how we understanding this learning progress. So I'm gonna present most part of my dissertation for two research questions. The first focus on the design is how does the design of different types of play within a mixed reality environment help first and second graders understand HDB system? And also the second question, I focus on how we understanding young children's learning aligned with these designs. So the first question, I would say, like, how do young children perceive activities within the mixed reality environment? And then how do young children demonstrate their understanding of the HDB system in the multi-model interview? So my design focus different three major components. The first one is play. So young children has been engaged in play far before they're starting formal schooling. And the other one is embodiment because young children use their body to demonstrate ideas a lot. And last but not least, the technology, how we can design technology and use this to support their embodied learning to explore these complex science systems. So my research was a design-based research, and then later I designed my own branch. The original platform was supported by National Science Foundation and the Indiana University Center of Research on Learning and Technology. So this platform is based on the generated embodied modeling science through technology enhanced play with GemStep. So this technology, the base is we design mixed reality to track young children's embodiment and support young children learn about complex ecosystem. And where we're able to set these platforms in a real classroom and have multiple students who interact with the same technology at the same time, which means multiple students can be tracked and docked and transferred to a platform. So what is the design of technology? So I use this POSIX tracking system, which starting in 2022. And these are little tags. If you think about as like a switch, or if you use any of the technology games, it's basically a tracker that when you hold in your hands or put on your body, they can track 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. Think of the space, like this could be the X and Y and height. But for my settings, we only use 2 dimensions. So basically, we track students' movement through this POSIX system. And then in the classroom, I set up multiple antennas. So these signals are sent into the antennas, and then the movement and location signals sent to our designed STEP platform and transferred to movement of designed characters. It could be anything, but in my dissertation, I focus on the honeybee. So what does it difference from my branch to my larger projects branch is I did this innovation to focus on the pollination mechanism, which is how we can support young children in both first and third perspectives. So I just mentioned about the embodied design that young children can be tracked. And one more thing that I add to the branch is I allow students to design their own garden. And so they can design the platform themselves. And then we introduce the concept of AI bees to help young children understand the human impact on ecosystems. And also for my idea that I would love to add the multiple model interview to the projects really align with their learning in the mixed reality environment. So this branch for my dissertation is separate technology branch, which is not funded by the NSF, but I co-code with PhD students for the entire branch and independently collect my data. So this is short overview of my curriculum. So in my dissertation, I did 6 activities. So the first 4 really focus on honeybees' behavior. So basically how honeybees communicate and how they do pollination. And then later for day 5 and day 6, that's the idea of AI bees and human impact, which is I allow students to draw on their own gardens or farms, and the researchers can put this design in computer and let students see what will happen with AI bees and which flowers or plants get pollinated. So therefore, in these projects, students are allowed to interact as 2 roles. First is the bee activities. In the bee activities, which are the first 4 days, students were embodied as bees, and their movement was tracked by the GemStep and transferred to bees on a shared screen. And then young children can collect nectar from the maps, and they automatically draw pollens when they move and when they pass by. And what I add to this very important third perspective is they take the role of farmers or beekeepers, and they draw a design, a garden as a group. I give them color printed sheets, and then the researchers put a design on a shared screen. Then we will send out the AI bees, and students get to observe which plant or plants get pollinated and reproduced. So this is a classroom setup. So all the P stands for the POSIX antennas, which is receiving all the signals. And I put the hat here. Okay. Is there lights? No. No. So basically, I put the POSIX tags on their hat so they can just get the tags on their bodies. And we put the share screens in front of the classroom. So these students are looking at the share screens. And I also give students color print map, which is a plant, exactly same map at the right. So students can make notes and draw which flowers get pollinated or which flowers other students visit. So these students are taking notes and looking at the share screen, and those students where the tasks are tracked by the system and turned into the bees to the right screens. So I made a GIF. So basically, you can see when students are moving in the space, they're moving as bees in the share screens. And also when you can see the lights up, that means they successfully collect nectar from the flowers. And also there's heart, that means the level of quality of flowers. We're not covered that detail today, but we do have some settings. And also we have the tank by the flowers means the quantities of nectars in the flower. And also for the hive, for now, is at the bottom, but students were able to move it around in later the AIB activities. And also talking about the farmers and AIB activities. So basically, I give students these color prints. So I scan this. This is the first version that students did is they draw checks to represent different type of plants, and they can tell the researchers whether they want plants or flowers. It's really up to them. So we give them options such as pumpkin, squash, and watermelon, and also 3 colors of flowers. Students have also put notes like pumpkins and watermelon on the top. And then the researchers will move all the plants according to their design. And later we will send out the AIBs after we finish putting things. And these are real time, which means you draw in the classroom and give it to researcher. We can immediately drag all the plants in the system and start to sending out AIBs. So it's not wait till a next class is exactly in the same lesson. So that's what happened when we send out the AIBs. It's basically the bees will starting to try find flowers and get nectar. And when their tanks are full, they will go back to the hive and drop down the nectars. And then if they pass by some other flowers, they may automatically and accidentally drop some pollen, which get other plants pollinated and reproduce for the next season. So that leads to my theoretical design framework. So I built my study based on the cultural historical activity theory from 1987, that I believe all learning happens on a social plane. And learning is a process of cooperation with multiple mediators, such as the rules I will talk about later, how we design rules to match the real rules of science phenomena, and tools, which is here are the technology, mixed reality environments to mediate their learning, and community, how students help each other, and division of labor, like different roles. And also I build this on learning in embodied activity framework LEAF, which my advisor published in 2020. For that framework, we believe embodiment is at both collective and individual levels. For example, why this is important? Thinking about when young children collectively use their body to learn in the classroom. For example, they're giving directions to their peer students, but they're also demonstrate the ideas that they understand what it matters for distance. And also students use gestures and embodiment to communicate and also demonstrate their own understanding. And therefore, I aim to design the embodied learning from the activity theory approach that I will present in next slides. And last is the piece that I present about in 2019 is a play as an entry point to science modeling practice. It could be a spectrum, which means when we talk about play, it's not separately play and work, but sometimes they are intertwined. So think about how I design the environment. There should be some alignment. As I mentioned about the rules can mediate young children's learning, I really think about how the rules of mixed reality environment should be aligned with the rules of real science world. So for example, one thing is a mixed reality environment is how young children collect nectars. So how I design is flowers are invisible in the screen. So students need to stop by at about like 1 to 2 seconds to collect nectar. And that also match the thing is bees, when they're in the hives, they cannot see where the flowers is. They communicate through this bee dance. So students do not know where the flowers is. That's why they need to pretend and communicate with their bodies, and bees collect nectar on purpose. And the next thing is about the pollination. So we designed these AI bees and flowers plants only reproduce if there are more than one per species. And also the AI bees need to visit multiple flowers and to spread pollen to get things reproduce. That also makes rich, like we're not talking about self-pollination for first and second grader here. So basically transferring pollen from one flower to another to get things pollinated. So method. So in my study, I invited 16 students from a first and second grade mixed classroom in Midwest and participate in the study. And for the learning content assessment, I did both multiple choice questions and a multi-model interview. So that's another important component in my research is how we capture young children's learning, how we understand their learning. So that's important for our interview to capture back about the design of technology and the activities. So first thing I'm thinking is I did this embodied learning. So add multiple embodied prompts, ask students to use their body to demonstrate ideas such as, can you stand up and show me how bees do that? And also think about perspective taking, because they took the role of both bees and farmers. So assign students tasks to take roles of bees, farmers, and scientists to demonstrate their understanding of the entire ecosystem. And also think about the mixed reality, how they interact with mixed reality, because when they took the role of farmers and design things, they were given about the paper and pen to design things. So we add props in the interview so students can organize these props, which is fake flowers, to design their gardens in the interview. And I also gave them some extra props, which is not, for example, presentations, but I also gave them like buckets and headbands so they can take the roles of bees. And something irrelevant is you can really tell when they took the roles of different characters, they decide by themselves to either take the costume on or off. So data source, I have multiple choice questions, answer sheet, and for video data, I have 45 minutes per session and 6 sessions in total with 4 angles, and also use Camtasia to capture both platform recording as well as a classroom overview. And for interview videos, I have 10 to 20 minutes per students and 16 students in total with both pre and post. And for data analysis, for my research quest 1 about the design, how different designs get students engaged in science learning, I did interaction analysis on classroom data. And for the second one, how we understand young children's learning, I do first content analysis, which is coding, on students' interview. And then I did interaction analysis on the interview data as well. So go back to the first research question, how different design of activity engage young children. So I realized both activities are very important and they're complementary to each other. First, for the bee activities, it offers students a playful experience, such as explore bees' behavior and use their bodies to represent honeybees' behavior, such as dance, communications, and also collect nectar. And for the farmer and AI bees activities, it really helps students test, which is kind of complex for first and second graders, and do the revisions for their design. They are focused more on the interdependence of the ecosystem and think about how different elements, such as the location of flowers and plants and the species, really matters and influence the pollination process. So they really want their farms to get more plants for the next season. And I've talked about these pre-built rules in the design alignment and realized pre-built rules within the immersive technology is very crucial mediators for young children's learning. For example, when young children try to examine whether their design of garden can get plants to reproduce, the pre-built rules to generate plants in the GEM Steps project help them to examine and evaluate their model. So this is a case that I'm going to show from the very beginning of young children engaging in embodied play and how it changed over time. So at the first day, we have these props games, and then we ask students to collect nectars. And that's very surprisingly that we can see there was a boy with a yellow arrow that see their the boys in black is collecting nectar on a fake flowers. So he moved to that flowers. And there's another girl also visit exactly same flowers. But on that day, when we ask the observers, why do you think they're all saying, they were like, there's a lot of bees visit that flowers. And the researcher also asked, repeat, I have noticed a lot of bees visit the flowers and pointing to the flowers that students visit. And observers said it's close to the hive. So for here, we recognize they realize there might be multiple bees visiting the same flowers, but there has nothing to do with the bees' nectars or quality of the nectars. They were just thinking about that's why they got visited, because the distance is close. For the next day, we were doing these bee activities and introduce the system. And also we found something similar as we can see there was top left blue flowers that got visited a lot. And they start to have like collect more nectars. And Lucy, who first found these flowers, shot to her peers that we got flowers, and she was very clear at that moment. She thought that was the best flower because there was 3 hearts indicate the quality of the flowers, and also there was like reproducing, which means there's multiple pollens there. So after she shot to the team, all the team were coming to the exactly same flower and try to get nectar from that flowers, and then the blue flower get pollinated and start to reproduce new plants. We can see there's, I'm not sure if that's too small. So there's multiple flowers on the top right. And Lucy and her peers just kept visiting the blue flowers with sparkles. So we talk about why do you think you need to visit these flowers? But because this time you can see it's not close to the hive. And they were very clear because there are more flowers reproducing, and they can tell the quality of nectar is good because there's 3 hearts. So there's one thing that improved, that not just seeing the superficial level of the distance, but think about what is the mechanism, like what we really need as bees. As bees, we need better nectars to make honey. Moving to the farmers, we think about the evaluation and revision of science modeling is we allow students to put the watermelons and commercial hives. So the same Lucy's team was putting, if you see, it's very clear that they put watermelon all to the top left and the pumpkins in the middle and also flowers to the right. And they also moved the commercial hive on purposely to the right, which means that we asked, why do you think that's you want to put a hive there? They were like, they're close, so the bees will pass by the flowers every time they visit back to the hive. And after we send out the AIBs, we can see all the watermelons and the flowers get pollinated and reproduced. And we also see that for first and second graders, surprisingly, they were able to make this revision for the last 2 days. So these are the day 5 map from group 1. You can see there's a little bit messy over where. So we have like 2 squash at the bottom and 2 pink flowers on the top, and then 1 watermelon to the right and 1 watermelon to the left, and a single pumpkin, poorly single pumpkin on the bottom right. However, when they send out the AIBs, they recognize not all the plants or flowers get pollinated. So the second day, we asked students, today you can revise your map or redesign your garden. So this group immediately changed their garden design and moved to the day 6, which we can see all the flowers now are to the left, and they decide to have multiple watermelon to the right and pumpkins in the middle. And for this time, when I send out AIBs, we recognize that all watermelons located in the middle right got produced. And also we can see all the flowers get pollinated and reproduce as well. So this was surprising because these are young children and they know how to revise their models without giving prompts. So design takeaway from this research is for bees and AIBs, we think they're complementary as a spectrum that for young children, and start with embodied learning and then move to deeper macro view of the interdependence of ecosystem. And also design alignment of the mixed reality environment is important to help young children understand rules of real science world. And second question is, how do we understand young children's learning? So I asked the students how they perceive these activities. I recognized there was not a huge difference. Apparently, their students love more about the bee activities because they got to move and interact, and less about the farmers. But when we asked whether do you think it's play or science activity, there was like no significant difference. They just enjoy. And when we ask, how do you think it helped you learn? These are all quotes from young children's interview. So basically, students talk about for the farmer's role is understand what farmers do, and also think about the bees. There are 4 about the bees. First, we can observe how bees do and use movement to learn new things. And we can take the role of bees, which they think is more exciting. And also, I asked them, how do I code this interview about like by roles and science concepts. And I find for bees, it's more clear. They talk about the activities and entities. So identify activities would be like one sentence to tell like bees use dance to communicate or bees collect nectar. And identify entity is like there should be nectars as a part of the flowers. And for farmers, they care more about the organization of entities, is like the locations of the plants or like the design of farms. And for science, there's more chaining, which is a mechanism reasoning. They were more clear what is the cause and consequence. And they use the entire animated model to demonstrate ideas. But again, I'm not making a comparison here. It's more like they're complementary to each other. We need both. So there's a brief code that I have, so we can see for bees it's very clear they have more codes in behavior, like mimic bees behavior to demonstrate ideas and identify activities. And for farmers, it's more about organization of entities. And for science, it's definitely more of like identify activities like descriptions and surprisingly more chaining like the mechanism reasoning. And also how young children interact with GEM step, which is important. We have these both plurals back to the design. So for bees, it definitely helps young children to focus on the phenomenon level and mimicking bees' behavior and identifying activities. And also for beekeepers or farmers, it's macro level of having a certain amount of plants at locations. So they were able to talk about the rational choice, not the mechanism. So here is a brief script that I'm not going through, but basically showing how young children as bees to use their body movement to demonstrate their activities. For example, when he talked about, I'm trying to find nectars and there's no nectar on this one, he used his body to try present the activities. And also he waved his arms like pretending to fly to another flower is definitely a behavior. Talk about the third person perspective. I mentioned that I allow students to take notes in the activities and really found that align with their explanation in the interview as well. For example, it helped them to explain the mechanism from outside perspective and focus on the organization of entities as well. So here I can see that a researcher, which is me, asked, why do you think these 2 flowers get pollinated? And the student said that's because has 2 of them. So we can see there's 2 flowers in the same shape. So that was identity property of entities, which is like the species of the flowers. And then I also asked why those flowers cannot get pollinated. So Ian said, these 2 only have 1 of each. And I asked, why not? And he said it's the first one. So think about the alignment is when the flower is first get visit, it has not yet pollen to pollinate the flowers. So it's a very obvious chaining at this moment. So I also allow students use embodiment in their interview. So we can see when they take the role of bees, they use more embodiment. And for the farmers, they interact with the props, which are the fake flowers more. And for science, they kind of use less, but more about talking. So I can see like what these overlap their ideas. So when they use full body movement, it's more about the behavior or like identify activities. And also they were explaining like how they collect nectar is also identified activities. But for the organization of entities, they interact with the props more. So for this clip, is basically our young children are trying to demonstrate both bees behavior and talk about pollination. For the first figure A, I asked student, what are you doing? And she's very clear, I'm collecting nectar, which is an activity she's recognized. And she used her full body movement, use her hands to collect nectar, stickers. And also for the next question, she was organizing her farm. And I asked why you make this change and think it's a good design. And she's very clear, because these two flowers are the same flowers and they are close to each other, they may get more flowers. It's very clear chaining that they are giving mechanism reasonings. And she was also using her body movement to point to the lilies, which is gestures. So that's less full body movement. So go back to my question. So why this is important? Because we have these roles in the design. So giving students the roles in the interview is complementary to each other and call back to the design. It will benefit young children's understanding of the honeybee system in the mixed reality environment and encourage them to use their body movement and interact with prompts to fully demonstrate what they know, not just part they can verbalize. And also for both body movement and props served as a tool to mediate mechanism reasoning. So major takeaway of my research, first talk about the designing. I realized that AIBs and simulation really help young children to have a macro view of ecosystem, but also the rules of activity with immersive technology are really important to help young children explore and their understanding and underlying rules of real science phenomenon. And also collective embodied modeling. Without these embodied activities, students might have the difficulty understanding the interdependence of ecosystem are very important to support young children's collectively build, adjust their representations. And also think about the design of my interview and how we understanding young children's learning is extremely to think about the alignment with your design and with your assessment. So my key idea for this interview is it really allows students to take different perspective and use their body movement to demonstrate their ideas and interact with props to take the roles of different characters. And also this modality allows students to demonstrate their understanding of the target science concepts more deeply. So next step, and we know like artificial intelligence and extended reality are kind of very popular days, but for me, what I want to do is integrate design principles to design AI-informed learning tools for young children. And also for the capture portion, it's about utilizing AI algorithm to analyze multimodality data resources. For example, a lot of work with young children, we do not have platform log data use. It's more about the video data. So I'm thinking three things that I'm interested to do in the future. Like first, support a collaborative learning and multiple model data sources to assemble them like video data, log data, and other data source. And also designing for inclusive and equitable embodied learning, which is lack of the field of embodiment, because most of the research was not that open to people with disabilities or have other needs. So some of my previous ideas I have not yet published is basically to run the temporal analysis on the log data. So basically we can see the interactions, like how young children interact with technology that I run myself. So I'm very open to any collaborations. If you want to expert in designing different technologies or think about how we can use your data and to understand people's learning, I'm very open. And thank you so much for coming to my talk today. I really like it. These are the QR code. If you scan it, it's my personal website. So most of my work are on there and my CV.
Hello. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Tu?
Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming to give your talk. So I have a question on the theoretical framework slide on the cultural history activity theory. It says that learning is the process of appropriation with multiple mediators. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
So in cultural historical activity theory, that believes learning is about the mediation, that our learning is mediated by different mediators. And the triangles means we have tools and also rules, labor, division of labor and communities that all shapes our learning. For example, when we're talking about these ideas, you are learning and our conversation is mediating your understanding. And for these concepts, young children are interact with the technologies. And later when they were able to think how they design the activity is basically the process of appropriate their learning into a next level. So it's mediated by different characters and artifacts. So the subjects would be students or you in this context, and the object for you is kind of learn things and understand the topics, and the mediation would be these slides and me. So for young children would be, they are students and the object is solar honeybee system, and the mediators would be first the artifacts, which is a mixed reality environment. And they're also mediated by the rules, as I mentioned, like their behavior are kind of constrained by the rules, because if they want to collect nectar, they have to stand on the things. And also the community, I didn't mention about because I have another paper on teachers' feedback. It's very important, like how teachers and students giving feedback and mediate their movings. So they may change their plan to get nectars. And also division of labor. They're not only interacting, even though when they are not interact with technology, they're observers. So they're kind of still receiving their opinions and building their understanding of the system. So there's multiple characters. So a typical activity theory is like 6 elements. So as I mentioned, the community, division of labors, artifacts, and rules.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So for the, you said there were 6 sessions and then the children had a chance to be like the farmer, the bee, or scientist. Like, how did they choose their roles, and did they have a chance to like switch their roles?
Yes, all the students get through, all the students rotate, and for each lesson, they get engaged all the same roles. For example, for this moment, you are bees. The other students are as scientists to take notes or like draw some predictions. And for the last 2 activities, all students are farmers, and students are not engaged and presenting their research, they are the scientists. So all the students are engaged in all 3 roles. And in the interview, there were 28 questions. So I designed on purpose, there's alignment. So basically I designed to make sure that for each roles, I have at least 3 questions so students can equally represent their understanding in the interview.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your innovative presentation. I have 2 questions. The first one is, what's your positionality during the research process? And how was teachers' roles during this learning process? And the second one is about the multimodal interview. I found it is very useful when you research on young children. Can you talk more about how did you design the multimodal interview? Is that a semi-structured interview questions? And do you improvise some questions from the data you collected? Thank you.
So for the first question, my positionality is very complex because I designed and also I taught the class. So the reason I'm doing this because I was doing this in pandemic and the school was closed for a while, and the teacher was first time doing mixed reality environment. So they said they're more comfortable doing classroom management instead of teaching the class. So I was teaching these I would not say it's teaching, I was leading the activities, and teachers were doing classroom management. And in some of the activities, the teachers was served as co-players. For example, they took the role of queen bees to test some assumptions with the kids. And the teachers also like sometimes like pretend to be the hive, so collect back the nectar. So the teachers at the very end, that's another topic. For the very end, you can see the teachers start to ask why questions. So it's like a very last 2 days. So the teachers are also developing their skills to facilitate learning with mixed reality. So that's my first question, answer to my first question. And also that was something I want to do more because original proposal was thinking about the teachers co-designing and all like changed because of pandemic. Indiana school closed for 2 years for public visitors. So that was not happening just because pandemic. So I still want to do it one day with the teachers. For the second question, multi-model interview is my innovation part that I really want to do, and it's also a long-term goal with my idea. So I do have spending times on developing these protocols. I do first round of drafting and check my alignments here. So I have very clear alignments, which I have very clear alignment, which question that I want to answer, which topic I need to cover, as well as which roles I need to cover. And also I do like pilot with, okay, we also, when I was PhD, we also do this like in my lab is pretend you're a child. So there was silly prompts for our lab members to pretend young children and interact. So list out all the alignments and also test with young children, test with your lab friends, and then finally make these very long prompts. So I think it's in the appendix in my dissertation. It's downloadable now in progress.
Okay, so this question is meant to open this conversation up. It's not meant to like challenge any of your work. So thank you for your presentation. So, you know, a long time ago, I worked for a science museum where we looked at play and science learning. And we were trying to categorize play. And there's like free play and guided.
Yes.
Right? And we had many conversations about like, oh, isn't all play guided play? And sure, we wrote the paper and we differentiated things. So in the same light, isn't all play embodied play?
That's the question I'm thinking. That's the exactly question I got from a committee member. So I think all play.
I told them.
Yeah. You email Joshua what question I should ask. So I think I got the exactly same questions. I think it could be, but think about farmers. They do not do that much embodiment. They were just doing designing and they enjoying control things. But the ways they control, or when you do gameplay, it may not be full. Let me see. How to say it? So it may not be full embodiment. It could be just gestures. And the second way is it could be all embodied play, but what does it mean with your body? Like how the body really helps in the learning. So as I mentioned from the very last slide, it's like embodiment can help us to take the role, like do the behaviors. So that's a superficial level. And then later it could be a way to demonstrate ideas. So I would say, generally, I cannot say 100%, but I believe most of the play are embodied play. But one thing as embodied researchers, we really need to think how the embodiment really mediate young children's learning. We cannot just stay as use their body to mimic behaviors.
Right. And you know, we ran into that problem because as soon as you have rules come in, it becomes
Yes.
guided play regardless. And then
Yeah.
the question becomes, all play has rules.
Yeah. Yeah,
because it
play,
wouldn't-
Vygotsky
Right.
play is a set of rules and imaginary situations.
So then, yeah, and we struggle with that a lot.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I don't have an answer. So, yeah, so it's complicated. I get
It's
that.
very
So,
complicated.
yeah.
And also for guided play, yeah, I think most of current in classroom people who are critic all should call all play in classroom guided play because we have already give some kind of prompts and constraints.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask a
So,
question?
Thank
thank you
you.
for a really interesting presentation. So my question is about play as well, but
Mhm.
I'm asking the question from early childhood
Mhm.
education field. So with your activity, most early childhood teachers would not define this as a play. If
Yes.
anything, it's probably playful learning.
Yeah.
So I have a long conversation with your advisor about this back
Uh-huh.
and forth for a while. So I'm very interested in your take
Mhm.
in terms of guided play, playful play, playful learning, teacher guided. Basically, early childhood we define play as more intrinsic.
Yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Some children
Like outdoor.
they mostly self-directed
Mhm.
activity and they take the leads right
Mhm.
here is clearly is very different
Yeah.
so I want to hear your thoughts about this. Second question I have is related to this different three roles.
Mhm.
They take turns, take
Mhm.
different roles. I feel there's a very interesting kind of fundamental learning questions there. I wonder if you look into it. For example, do the kids starting with the bee, then move on to farmer, then move on to scientist,
Mhm.
their learning
Mhm.
versus children start with a role of scientist,
Mhm.
going to farmer, so there's a different combination of this. I was wondering whether you look into that. So both
Yeah.
questions.
So for the first question about play, I think I agree with that. Early childhood education scholars and the definition of learning sciences will be different because my master was with Dr. Doris Bergen, who believed that young children had their own definition. So I would say I'm gonna leave it to open. I believe both definition works, but in my work, I would say it's more like we go with Vygotsky's definition of play is a set of rules with imaginary situation. That's what we want to offer young children. And that's how we define play in my dissertation or this type of related work is we have the rules, we have the imaginary situations, even though we do give them some guidance. So it's more like to Dr. Doris Bergen's definition of guided play in classrooms. But I'm also open to like early childhood, like preschools in outdoor or recreational self-directed play, because that gives students more flexibilities and they're more freedom to develop their own language skills and their own ideas. So that's my short answer for the first questions. And the second, I would say for scientists is a parallel character because it's not direct interact with technology. Students started to take the role of scientists at the very beginning of the curriculum. So once they were not engaged in the environment, they were always giving something to take notes and take the roles of scientists. That's what we give the prompts in the classroom. Hi kids, now you're the scientist. When you are watching other kids, you are going to taking notes or draw what flowers you would like. So that's the prompts we give them. And I do bees and farmers in the sequence on purpose because I believe the farmers, I really want them to focus on human impact on the ecosystems. And also for bees part, it's easier to get them started with the technology because if we move to the farmers and let them design, they probably have nowhere to go at the very beginning. So I will be, for my perspective, giving them something first as a target character is good, something good to start. And for the farmers, like, or the macro view should be always come later. And for science, I realize they do have difference over time. At the very beginning, they're just draw random things. And at the very last 2 days, they know how to give feedback and what to observe. For example, they start to give predictions, they were thinking like their map are not gonna work. And they will say like, you should not put the flowers here because that's too far, or there's only one flowers. So you can see as a scientist, their minds change from the beginning to the end because they are got more ideas, know how to give feedbacks to their peers. Hi.
So my question is, with your mention of spatial design and immersive learning, right? Those two key elements are things that I think more and more the future is going to need to be prepared for. So how do you think these concepts and these things are going to influence learners in the 6th grade and up? And how are the evolutions in technology going to allow teachers to start to integrate?
So one thing I'm thinking is for 6th grade of that, like another idea is the computational thinking and programming. So when we think about how we get students into programs, should we start with text directly? That would be so hard. And that would be a middle point to have students use their bodies to demonstrate idea and testing these models. So for one thing that I can do is these things are all built on JavaScript, and students can change variables. So in the later things, we can easily make these variables and interactions changeable. So Bs are not for that, but the interaction and the platform itself can apply to more complex ideas for higher level learners. And we can first change the variables to let students test and understanding what is computational thinking and programming. And second, for like 6th grade-ish, that could be used as a starting point to do this partial programming, like use your body, test all things and change and think how it can go. And think about the scratch is like your building blocks and use embodiment, like what are those hard questions. You can have students first program and then use their body to test all things. And if that not work, that can also help them to develop and revise things. So I think this model and platform and mixed reality can help older learners in many different ways. And as long as the design principle is clear, like how we assign perspectives for young children and how we really start with something small. Like for example, text would be really hard to start with, but if you can test out some variables and interactions, that would be very easy for like 6th graders to start and get into computational thinking and think is not also for me, it's not something super complicated I cannot do. It's like doable for 6th graders and middle school students.
This is very affirming because I've been doing Horizon Worlds with visual block coding and having collaborative groups build and design and manipulate code in that same type of environment. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi. Okay.
Hi, Fan.
Hi. Okay. So this is sort of going back to the play. I feel like in addition to rules, there's also like emergent norms that happen.
Yes.
As like children sort of socially negotiate the microculture of their little game.
Yes.
And those might be afforded by the design of the play space. Do you know what I mean? Could you speak to anything about like, how does the design influence the parts of the play that aren't necessarily under the control of the researcher or facilitator?
I think that also depends. I have a third paper on like different types of interaction in classrooms. So that's a really good question. So I think my short answer to that is I do think the designs influence what kind of prompts teacher asks as follow-up questions. And also students' feedback, that's the right word, also change a little bit. For example, at the very beginning, superficial bees activities, basically behavioral questions about like, you should visit that flowers, or why don't you come back, or something like that, all about the behaviors. But later in the farmers' activities, really more about the why questions. Why do you think you want more watermelons? And that also leads to 2 levels. The very first day, they will say, I really want 3 watermelons because I like watermelon myself to eat. And then later they were thinking, I need multiple watermelon because if there's only 1 watermelon, it's gonna be sad. The watermelon cannot get reproduced. So it's about difference about the interaction And also the way they answer questions change over time. So that's my short answer. But yeah, I do have a separate paper on that.
Following Finn's question and picking up on Holiday's question earlier, also, I feel like the historical part of cultural historical activity theory might have more to contribute here, because the mediational means that the children are engaging with came from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So Finn's asking, like, where did these routines come from? And I'm guessing that the children have some experience using this space to, like, play games, right?
Yes.
Or like, and so
something else.
right,
Yeah.
like where did those practices come from? And I'm particularly curious about, I saw in the photographs and the videos you had, the children were doing this fairly complex thing where they would be moving around in the space, but totally attuned visually to the screen, because the space isn't giving them feedback on where the flowers are, but they need to coordinate their XY position with what they're seeing on the screen, which itself is I think a pretty complex move that may have some sort of historical antecedents behind it also. Where, like,
yes, and also
did
how
they
they
learn to use their
combine
bodies as
these
tools?
digital representations and the physical representation in classrooms. Yes, I agree with that. They have something, and that was not in my dissertation. But something I will do but never finish is also this idea of embedded phenomenon, which is really decorate a museum more in classroom to mirror real science phenomenon. For example, if we're doing moth, we can put some like fake trees and to get the costume for students to demonstrate this idea. So it's more like an embedded phenomenon to decorate the classroom to mirror the real science things and mix with like technology, but it's not happen now, but hopefully happen in the future, and think about how that really, like the cultural part, bring to students learning.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you, Dr. Tu.
Thank you.
Can you hear
And
me?
my office is on the 5th floor, and if you have questions, feel free to reach to me. I'm very open to any collaborations.